A continuación, iniciaremos el primer módulo de este foro, que incluirá la perspectiva internacional con la intervención del señor Daniel Steinholz, representante de Swedish Standard Institute, coordinador ante la Nordic Responsibility, quien asiste en representación del señor Bengt Reitest, quien por razones de fuerza mayor no pudo viajar a Chile. El señor Steinholz se referirá a las estrategias exitosas de impulso a la sostenibilidad en Noruega, Suecia, Dinamarca y Finlandia.
Thank you very much for letting me having the opportunity to speak here today about something that I'm quite proud of, namely how we work with CSR and the contribution to sustainable development in the Nordics. And specifically, I'll also be talking about the Swedish approach. Being a Swede, that's a gimme. Thank you so very much, President, EU Ambassador, and Minister of Economy for the fine introduction. I heard both SMEs mentioned. I also heard the discussion on how to transform long-term value into the short-term value discussion. And that, to me, is, I think, one of the absolute keys to get this show on the road globally. And I'll come back to that a little bit. So thank you so much for having me, although I know that I wasn't your first option. But I'm happy to be here instead of Bengt, whose name, and he's a good colleague of mine, his name is in the report, or in the program, sorry. I'll try to talk to you today about the Nordic perspective, and again, the Swedish perspective specifically. The very angry guy you saw in the beginning, he's our Minister of Financial Markets in Sweden. And he's actually been doing some great things, I think. So I'll try to talk to you a little bit about that. And also mentioned before by the EU Ambassador, the guidelines specifically pointed out in the EU communication on CSR. Those have been a topic for me the last couple of months, as I've been working together with the Ministry of Finance in Sweden to actually trying to see how the state-owned companies in Sweden better can fulfill the owner's policy, which I will talk to you about shortly. Also, I will shortly mention, which also has been named, ISO 26000. In Sweden, we brought forward a self-declaration on this specific global important standard. So I'll just give you a tip on that, since the first ones are out there on the internet now, so I'll show you something about that as well. Okay, let's go. So the Nordic countries, I think one flag is missing, but they are not really in the information, so I'll do with these. And I have to start, of course, with our rich neighbor to the west, Norway. And here you have a very happy man called Yngve Slyngstad, who actually is governing now the biggest pile of money out there. So if we think that money has anything to do with this development that we're talking about, this guy is one of the guys to actually have in your focus, because he's sitting on it. And the other guy that I don't know too well, Abu Dhabi, they formerly had the largest state-owned capital fund, but is now passed by Norway. So it's the world's largest state-owned capital fund. It now governs more than, it's almost hard to pronounce, but 500 billion euros. Somewhere I read that that's actually 1% of all the value of the total value of listed corporations in the world, which just blows my mind, but that's how it is. And what I will tell you a little bit about, since I actually got some insight in how the criteria were actually brought forward in the beginning, because they have a little bit of a conservative way of looking at excluding criteria. Although they already from the beginning, I think, excluded Singapore technologies for producing a very evil type of personal mines. And I think they just excluded also tobacco company. But otherwise, they've been really conservative about excluding criteria. What they have been is that on the other side, they've been quite onto the case of positive criteria, which for me, as working a lot with business, is of course something that are more fun, right? As a CEO, it's more fun to work with how to see the money coming in than just being focusing on the costs. So again, turning long-term values into short-term value decisions also could be, as I see it at least, something about changing costs into investments. And of course, excluding versus positive criteria has something to do with that. And again, it's not going too bad either. What they did coming up with this criteria is that they actually, and this could be something to maybe take after, they actually took the ordinary Norwegian. Since the oil is all Norwegians' property, so the money, the funding, is actually the Norwegians. And so when they were thinking, how should we do this? How should we invest our money? How should we invest the Norwegians' money? They actually took the plain Jane, ordinary Helga, or ordinary Ole, Norwegian names, of course. And so how do they live? How do they think? What are their values? And how could we turn that into criteria? And basically what they found out quite fast was that there was prominent names from all over the Norwegian economy, and also actually one of my colleague back then, 10 years ago, Ola Lerman is called. So that's why I got the insights. Actually, what they very fast learned was that, well, you know, Norwegians, they're pretty much like anyone. They don't really want to do anything stupid, and they really like to do something good. But again, they drink, they smoke, they gamble. They're not too against being a part of NATO. So a lot of the at that point common excluding criteria were quite fast off the list, so to speak. Wrong or right, I couldn't tell you, but that's how they discussed it. So the excluding criteria was quite fast something that they left behind to instead look at the positive criteria. So now it was some time back that I was in contact with them, but in the beginning they looked at corporations that worked with, for instance, signing up to the Global Compact, working with sustainable reporting according to the GRI, and actually looking actively for corporations and industries showing that they wanted something else, showing that they wanted to be a part of this change. So that was from the beginning a basic platform for their criteria and for the funds. So that's Norway. I like them. Since they're so rich also, so actually we can, I know for a fact I know that EU, well, you know, EU, we have a little bit of a problem over there with finance, and actually I know that there have been eyes wandering off to the Norwegian oil fund to see if maybe it's the Norwegians that will save us all. Excuse me for my very bad Spanish. I know it sounds like English, at least sometimes. Finland, my now good friend from Finland, thank you. Actually, I'm a little bit jealous of you. I told you already before we stepped in here, because Finland actually has a great call for action. They have a great plan. They're one of the first, at least that I've seen, countries within the EU that actually has a real plan for action. And they even said that to be a part of a fast-growing economy, or hopefully growing economy, to be a part and have an advantage as a nation, Finland, and the corporations within it, we need by 2015 have certain things in place. Because the sustainable development is going so fast in a global perspective, so we need to have the public and private sector fully committed, otherwise this won't work. We have to have a focus on strategic leadership, focus on transparency and openness, both in organizations and corporations. And that is because we have to be able to anticipate and adapt to very fast changing climate and business climate. And a vital part of that is actually to learn how to have an active dialogue with the stakeholders. Of course, also that authorities endorse these solutions and trying to find this, to level out the playing field, but at the same time safeguarding the rights and the needs of the stakeholders. So that's an important role for authorities in Finland, at least pointed out by this document. And again, the public sector is really important, specifically if you read the document, which I suggest that you do if you're interested in how a nation could follow sustainable development. They also put out in the document how to work with public procurement, or actually how important it is to work with public procurement. Benchmarks, of course, is in the Finnish resolution put out something very important. And again, which was mentioned in the introduction, SMEs also is a vital and very, very important part of the Finnish way of doing this. And needless to say, central government needs to have a great and good coordination of this issues with respect to CSR. So Finland, I'm jealous. This is a very, very good document. Looking at Denmark, the thing that have made Denmark, I think, almost famous in the world of sustainability is that they did something with their reporting. If we look, this is from a global KPMG, the big consultancy firm. They may annually survey on how global sustainable reporting is developing. And they put up a quality of communication and level of process maturity on the two. Excuse me, people to the right. Hopefully you can see it, the two axles. And if you look at that, and we can see Finland is down here. Denmark, they're all the way down here. So Finland is on the way, Denmark closely to, what does it say, starting behind. If you look at some more, I think we have Norway, for some reason not in this picture. I think we have Sweden up there. Chile is there. So you're already ahead. I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but I'm proud to talk about the Nordic responsibility and the Nordic approach to CSR, but I'm also a little bit worried on behalf of myself, my country, and my neighbors. And that's because I'm not sure, although I'm very proud that we're doing a lot of great things, of which I'll show you a few soon. But I'm afraid that it's not going as fast as it has to. And that is in two perspectives, both for sustainable development, but also, and maybe more what the introduction here has been around, for actually competitive advantage and value creation, which I'll come back to and show you soon. So what did Denmark do in 2010? They, of course, made this mandatory by law for the largest 1,100 corporations in Denmark. They now, by law, have to have a sustainable reporting according to GRI. So you can wonder if they, by the next time this survey is made, is up there. We'll see. No one knows, but it's an interesting initiative. And what you can already see, this is from the same survey, is that already in 1 year, it went up, which you see in the green showings, that they were quite bad in 09, or I'm not sure when the year was, 08 or 09. But already in 1 year, they went up to like 91% of the corporations having a sustainable reporting according to GRI. So that's a good thing. The question is, does that really do the thing for us? Is reporting the way forward? Well, here we have the angry man again, Peter Norman. He is angry for certain reasons. One of them is that he thinks sustainable reporting is not good enough. Sustainability is a strategic matter and has to be handled accordingly in the boardroom. That's what he says. He also says it like this: we therefore will have to integrate sustainability in corporate governance to secure long-term value creation. Now, this is of course for specifically state-owned companies in Sweden, but again, for you who have been in Sweden the last year, and that is how many? So all of you four who saw that there have been big debates on this matter. We have a couple of corporations that has been, behaved badly, you can say, and a couple of them has been state-owned companies. So that's why he's really, angry. So let's look a little bit into the Swedish perspective then, which I of course know most about, and specifically state-owned companies. I just now I'm working with them as an advisor, so I have a little bit of insight on how this is working right now. And they have a turnover, combined the state-owned, actually I should say that like this. The Swedish state is actually, if not one of the absolute biggest owners in Sweden. So that, of course, you can mirror yourself in that. I don't know exactly how it is in Chile, but I guess the same way in Sweden and Chile is that, of course, it's a symbolic question as well. And it's been in Sweden, if ministers are out discussing it, like we have it here now today, it spreads like rings on the water in the business community. So, and again here with procurement, for instance, it actually affects a lot of suppliers, employees, customers, partners, of course. So they have a turnover of 40 billion euros. It's airlines, it's banks, it's telecom companies, but also we have a theater thrown in there. We have the opera house, and even though they're royal, it's a very big spread between a large bank, international bank, and a small theater. And actually, they have the same expectations on them. So that's something to handle. Again, 100,000 employees, and they give back to us taxpayers some 3 billion euros every year. So that's it. Actually, if we look at since 2007 has been mandatory for the state-owned companies to have sustainable reporting. And this is the first page of the yearly annual report of the state-owned companies. And looking at the GRI perspective, you can see that 96% of the state-owned companies actually report, in comparison with 42% of the 100 largest listed corporations in Sweden. So that's one thing to look at. But actually, the even more interesting thing, for you who would like to learn Sweden a little bit is looking at the top of this slide. To begin with, top of the first page, of course, it's discussed how the state-owned companies are governed. But on second place, we have gender balance. That's Sweden. That's where we are. Gender equality is like on top of the list of a lot of all the political parties. So again, showing that we have like board members 49% women, and the chairman 43%. So this is Sweden in short. And what they say in the owner's policy about the corporations is that the state-owned companies should be role models within the sphere of sustainable business, supporting and complying with international guidelines. And they have been mentioned here already, and I'll show you a little bit more about that later. And as you see, not only complying, but also supporting. And at last, state-owned companies should have well-considered and broadly accepted policy and strategy, as well as established goals for sustainable business. And it's actually business goals that they're supposed to have. Business goals set within the sphere of sustainability, which is really interesting. I sat down with the theater the other week, and for you who are interested in theater and have been up all night, not being able to sleep, to understand how theaters can work with sustainability in the long-term and short-term perspective, talk to me later. I can tell you, because it's really interesting. Okay, so what Swedes actually have done is that we already had the mandatory GRI reporting as to measure the outcome of the sustainability activities. But what we also added now is to actually, from the same costs, looking at it as an investment, getting out more of it. So hopefully, within a couple of years, even though the GRI parameters maybe would be fewer, and the sustainable reporting maybe will be a little bit thinner, but the contribution will be higher. That's the basic main point of the idea with this. And again, to secure the long-term value creation, and of course, again, that has to be taken into the short-term decisions already. And I know that the Swedes have got some great help from the EU communication, and specifically, apart from the pointed out 5 guidelines for sustainable corporation, this definition that actually also talks about maximizing the creation of shared value for their owners, shareholders, and their other stakeholders and society at large. So again, not only the preventing the bad, the no harm principle, but actually also the do good principle, which too, when I sit and talk to the management and boards of the companies, is a more triggering matter. Not to take away anything from the fact that large corporations have to have control over their negative impacts. But again, to have long-term value creation, we have to combine the two. So this is a very fundamental part of the work that is done in the large Swedish corporations right now in Sweden. And again, they, of course, point out, as we have said now a couple of times, some guidelines or frameworks. The ILO, the ISO 26000, UN Global Compact, of course, OECD, and the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. And these, as you saw in the owner's policy, are really important to the state of Sweden, and that the corporations should comply to, not only comply, but support. So actually within the owner's policy are these 4. GRI, of course, mandatory since a couple of years back, and from the beginning they left out ISO 26000. But in the scope of this study that I will show you some insights on, ISO 26000 is included, and you will understand soon why. So the scope, basically, of this study was to support state-owned companies to be able to evaluate how they, in the best way they can, comply with the owner's policy. So that's a little bit what I'm going to show you right now. Actually, what we did, we took the 5 frameworks, and we started off with the desktop analysis, and then we interviewed experts from all the different frameworks, guidelines, and we also interviewed and consulted practitioners, mostly in Sweden, but also internationally. And in the end, we also talked to a sample of the state-owned companies and got this graph validated, you could say. And this is supposed to be a little bit of a help for them when they are looking into this, starting to find ways to create business goals and how they could use the frameworks. So what we found out very fast, of course, to a lot of you, this is not a new knowledge, but anyway, for some of the Swedish state-owned companies, it actually is. So human rights, environment, labor, and anti-corruption, of course, you recognize it from the Global Compact principles. That's a hard core of all these frameworks, actually. But if that's the biggest overlap, there are also some very, very specific strengths to every one of these. OECD, of course, being a political agreement, and in Sweden, it shows very clearly in a deeper way what is expected of the corporations from the owner side. Global Compact, of course, as a call for action, and again, a lot of the Swedish corporations, they haven't been asked to sign the Global Compact, but a lot of them have. What we can see is that a little bit fewer of them actually participate in the discussions and forums that are able through the Global Compact. The GRI, of course, and interesting to hear from the experts when we're talking to them and how the G4 now will be changed. The framework is, of course, as it was from the beginning, a tool to help a corporation or organization report on the sustainable matters. They actually said that, yeah, well, it's interesting because it seems like a lot of corporations out there use it as a management tool, directly as it is. And that was never the intention. But nevertheless, that's what happens. And a lot of the state-owned companies in Sweden, perfect examples of that. Then we have the ISO 26000, which is, well, it was built to be a support for implementation. And it actually holds even very concrete recommendations how to work on implementation. Has a bigger focus on stakeholder dialogue, which is, I think, is a good contribution. And also focus on the relevance, the strategic relevance of different topics. And again, we have the UNGP, which is very narrow, specifically on human rights. And as many of you, of course, already know, it's totally aligned within the OECD guidelines and also ISO 26000. So for the state-owned companies in Sweden, that's a little bit of a help. Because, so this is a little bit of a guidance for them when they start to work with the guidelines and trying to do what they think they should towards the owner's policy. But again, looking at this, give them some advice, but actually, if we look at the owner's policy, what's in there already now, ISO 26000 is left out. So that's a discussion right now whether it should still be left out or not. If we look at how it's been until now in Sweden, and I guess you can make a comparison globally also. OECD has put out the expectations on the business conduct. Global Compact has been used as a promise, something that you can sign and participate in, joining the call for action. And the Global Reporting Initiative has been something that you actually could work in very concrete to report on what you do. The black box for a long time has been the implementation. And there is no excuse or there is no difference in the Swedish corporations. Actually, if you remember what the angry man said, sustainable reporting is not really enough. So we have to do something more, and that, of course, is within the area of implementation. So really what's been up for discussion, or is up for discussion right now, is to make the risk and possibility analysis more deepening that. You can even talk about the due diligence on a broader scale. And having that stakeholder validated in some way. That's part of a lot of the, well, ISO 26000 for one framework, but it's actually starting to show in all the other guidelines as well. The updated OECD works with due diligence, the new G4, which no one has seen but heard about, will strengthen their materiality analysis. So it's, if you ask me, it's a direction that we are on. And also mentioned in the introduction, this is a development that we can see, not only in Sweden, but probably globally as well. So again, the question would be how to implement, at least for the state-owned companies in Sweden. There are a lot of tools, and some of them seem to be a little bit more well packaged, and one of the which Bengt, who should be here instead of me, is chairing, is Nordic Initiative for Social Responsibility. And that actually pointed out ISO 26000 as a great tool to work with implementation. What is said is that there is a need to communicate how ISO 26000 can be implemented in all organizations and to simplify the use of the standard. So, and there's been, between the 4 countries participating in this, there's been a roadmap put out to actually do this. If you're interested further on the specific plans and projects, I can mention a few of them. One is to write a Nordic paper on CSR. One is to form an online platform. And there are a couple of more plans. Actually, it hasn't been so much done yet. This was just formulated just not less, well, 5 or 6 months ago. So there has not been any progress report yet, but it's to come, I'm sure. What also happened with ISO 26000 in Sweden is that the guideline in itself has been, I would say, very curiously met by the market. People are wondering what it is, how it could work. They're a little bit confused. Why you can't be certified on this? What is it? What happened in Sweden is that we brought forward a self-declaration, actually Swedish smaller standard or specification as it's called, for self-declaration. And the first one is just out now. There is a linkage in the bottom there, but I don't think you will have the time, even if we spend until lunch, to write it down. But I'll be happy to send it to you. But I also know that if you just get into the volvo.com site, you will find it if you say ISO 26000. So they actually, this is the first, I think, well, since it's a Swedish specification, I think it's the first corporation that is actually out there showing off their self-declaration towards the ISO 26000. And also, another one of the front runners, a housing corporation in Sweden, HSB, which I've been fortunate to work with, they will be actually the first organization in Sweden to actually get a verification of their self-declaration. So it's not a certification because it's not reaching any specific goals or measures, but it's actually the self-declaration where they present how they have worked with maximizing their contribution to sustainable development. It's how they've done that and there's a third party coming in to verify that what they say is true. So the critical consumer and stakeholders of Sweden now actually can view this information and see whether not only if they are reporting on specific issues and merits, but also how have they fixed their engine, made it faster, how have they optimized their way to work to contribute in a maximum way to sustainable development. So they will be first out in May, I think. And again, so this would be a little bit of a, could be, because what I've been showing you now will be presented to the Swedish management and the state-owned companies in 2 weeks. And this could be one of the conclusions there. Because what we got back is that, there's so many guidelines. We are really businesses. How should we think about this? And maybe you could say, how you do it, this extra loop, this deepening of the due diligence, the risk and possibility, even you could say business analysis of how to go about sustainable development working within a corporation. Maybe the guidelines will help you, the frameworks will help you, but actually it doesn't really matter as long as you're sure that you understand the business implications, would be thinking about risk and possibilities. You have to, it's okay, don't use the guidelines but you have to show me that you're sure that you know the critical business impacts of this trend that we see. That is a global one. Because in the state-owned case, that they want as owners to secure the long-term value creation. And as a bonus in that case, also optimize the contribution to sustainable development. So that would be a possible conclusion when I talk to them in 2 weeks. And if you look at this, and when you've been out to conferences like this, which I'm sure you have, a lot of you, there's a lot of talk about new business models, sustainable business models. There's a change from looking at the costs, how to see it as an investment, which needs a lot of work within the investor relations department, for instance. It's a different way of talking about value, not just to see this as something that is risk minimizing or just a cost. To have this development actually going a little bit faster than it is right now, we have to find new ways to talk about and combine the two, the contribution to sustainable development and value creation for corporations. So if you see this as almost as a business philosophy or a part of a new business philosophy, and some corporations even has it as a new business model, some by force and some by own free will, then you can adjust. This will be the last slide. If you look at this as a business philosophy, I just a couple of weeks back found a new report that I would like to share with you. If you look at this as a business philosophy, and this is what makes me a little bit worried on behalf of the Nordic countries, the winners will be, and presenting to you the parameters that is in this scope, actually made by the MIT and the Boston Consulting Group, is the report is called Bottom Line Innovation, I think. How corporations that see sustainability not just as a necessity but a possibility, how they change their business models. So let's see now if it's added value, if they say that doing this has actually added value to their business, and also how many of them have actually changed already in the business model. And this would be the result. So the lowest rate of business model innovation and the fewest business model that shows added profit, down in that not so very fun corner, we have North America, for instance. I think we can find Europe, something just a little bit further ahead. Africa would be the ones getting on the way faster than many of us South America is ahead of Europe. So this could actually be an interesting starting point for our discussion later. I have some ideas why this could be this way. I can see, I know more how it is in Sweden, and a little bit, we are a little bit thick and happy. That's how it is. And there are other parts of the world that are more onto this, specifically combining the sustainable solutions and profits. Maybe even turning long-term value discussion into the short-term decisions. Okay, I think I'll end there. Thank you very much.